Hello, and welcome to another installment in the Law & Order video series. In this one, we'll be unpacking the story from the short indie horror game Mothered by Jamie Gavin. This one was a pixel horror game, which I love, and the story was amazing. Literally amazing. I loved it from start to finish. It's as horrifying as it is heartbreaking. That being said, there will be spoilers in this video, so you have been warned. It's a Sunday evening, and a man is driving a car down a quiet road, and in the back is his daughter Liana. He mentions that Liana has had an operation and is going back home. He also remarks that they needed to get her out of that place as it wasn't good for her head. He mentions that she probably won't remember much, but she needs to try her best to get back to her old self and regain her memories. They arrive and the dad states that he needs her to bring a box out to the car, which the mother has prepared. Sure enough, a note from the mother states that the box is on the couch and that the mother isn't feeling well and has gone to bed. The daughter then takes the box out to the car and the dad simply leaves. The daughter is exhausted, so she goes to bed. She wakes up the next morning and her mother is in the kitchen. She greets her, and after Liana eats her breakfast, the mother gives her a tour of the house. Bizarrely, there are areas that are strictly off limits. The downstairs bathroom, Liana's brother's room, and the parents' room are all forbidden. Later that day, the mother is literally standing out in the front yard staring at the sunset. The mother mentions to Liana that they will have a tour of the outside of the house the day after in order to try and get some of her old memories back. Liana makes her way to bed, but standing there in the pitch black in her bedroom is her mother. He tells Liana that she is full of regret and tells her no more. Liana then goes to bed. She wakes up on Tuesday morning, has breakfast again and meets her mother outside for a tour. She shows her the orchards, the graveyard and the barn, the latter of which is strictly off limits. Later that evening, the mother tells Liana that her father is never home and that he's buried himself in work ever since Liana first got sick. Just as she's going to bed, Liana knocks on her brother's door and he says that the mother has been feeding Liana dirt. Literal dirt. And he's a bit weirded out that 1, the mother is saying that it's her favourite, and 2, that Liana believes her and eats it. Again, mother is standing in the dark like a creep and tells Liana that the day after they will go to the orchards and pick apples. The following morning they do just that. After having breakfast they pick apples, and later that evening the mother asks Liana if she is remembering anything from before. There's no answer, and the mother assumes that Liana still has no memory of what happened. Liana wakes up the following morning and mother has left a note saying that she's gone to bed but she feels unwell. However, this is a lie, as the mother is in the shed in the orchard speaking on the phone. She's speaking to the father, saying that she cannot do this anymore, and complains that she is stuck there doing the same thing week in, week out, and mentions that they've renounced nature. The mother mentions that the father is visiting tomorrow evening. Later that day, the mother apologises for coming across agitated, and in the evening the phone rings. It's Liana's father, calling from the office, but is interrupted by his colleagues, and he mentions that instead of speaking to his daughter, he's instead speaking to his wife. He mentions that the mother says things aren't going well, but he's visiting tomorrow evening. Liana goes to bed, and the following morning things start to get a bit weird. Messages start popping up such as no dialogue and errors. Very strange. The mother states that Liana is allowed to go into the graveyard. Liana goes there and, bizarrely, after lots of messages telling her not to proceed and that it risks core instability, she is there standing before her own grave. She turns around and her mother is standing there dressed in black. Liana tries to communicate with her mother, but it seems her mother cannot hear her. In the evening, true to his word, the father arrives and him and the mother are arguing in the bedroom, but Liana goes to bed. The next day, Saturday, the mother tells Liana she can just stay in her room today. Nonetheless, Liana goes downstairs and startles her mother. Her mother seems to freak out and runs away, hiding. After finding her, the mother fully freaks out and locks her in the shed in the orchard, telling her to stay there until the following day and her father will come and pick her up. Liana attempts to escape, and after some strange PC desynchronization messages popping up, she manages to break out. She goes back into the house and everything is different. There seems to be a red mist surrounding the mother. The mother shouts and says that she doesn't know who Liana is and to leave the family alone. Liana desperately tries to call out and manages something, but it's not discernible. The mother says contamination is beginning and that it's not their little girl in there, it's something else. All the while, a message is popping up stating, "You're not you." On Sunday morning, Liana wakes up and refuses to eat her breakfast. The phone rings and it's Liana's father. He asks her not to lose her head and that he'll be there to pick her up in the evening. Later that day, the mother is looking out at the barn and says, "Not long now." Liana grabs a kitchen knife from the drawer in the kitchen. She finds the same note from the mother that she read a week ago when she arrived at the house. She makes her way to the barn and standing at the top, is her mother. The mother asks for the knife, as if she knew all along that Liana would bring it along. Liana seems to be experiencing an internal conflict, and she argues with herself in regard to giving the knife. They look at the sunset as error messages pop up on the screen, and the mother says, whoever Liana is, that they exist in two separate realities, and that she will never be her mother. The mother places her hand on Liana's head, and the word rebooting appears. Liana is back in the car with her father on the Sunday evening, driving to the family's house again. Now, I guess this would be considered a loop ending. It's not a loop, FYI, it's something completely different. There's another ending, and we will actually discuss it while we are exploring the story. So let's start with talking about Liana, the main character. Throughout the game, which builds the tensions really well, we see that Liana had undergone an operation of sorts. She's evidently quite young, or possibly a teenager, judging from the way the parents speak to and address Liana. But the game started to indicate that there were strange goings on, such as the dad wouldn't let his daughter see his face because, in his words, it's unsafe, and the family having put brown tape over the bathroom mirror so that the daughter wouldn't be able to see herself. This all culminated in the visit to the graveyard when Liana's grave is discovered. So what exactly is going on with this girl? Is she dead, or isn't she? She is in fact dead, but we'll uncover what happened, how she died and came to be alive again, through discussing the parents. So, mum and dad. The mum's name is Evelyn, and we don't know the dad's name. They had two children, the brother whose name isn't known, and Liana. Basically, all was well in this family until Liana fell ill. She was admitted to hospital, but despite treatment, her condition was deteriorating fast. Faster than the doctors expected, in fact. Now, due to the father's job working at a corporation called Enigma Technologies, he came up with a plan that he thought would not only save his daughter, but would actually rewrite everything they knew and considered in regard to nature and life. The father started work on this technological breakthrough, a project which was something that he dubbed Angel. These were essentially androids. They made a few, but they essentially just did whatever they were told to do. The father came up with the theory that the android would function and eventually become a sentient being through a core, more specifically a human core. And this would need to be integrated into an environment where it would thrive. You can probably see where this one is going. The father had his design, but in order to keep working on the android, he needed to present the concept to investors in Enigma Corp. Well, they loved it, and funded it with the idea of turning it into a commercially available product. The father mentions that the investors mentioned an Enigma Machine, but we'll discuss this later. One thing that is mentioned a lot in the game is the word corruption. So what is this corruption? Well, after he had designed and created the vessel, so to speak, the father needed a core in order for the thing to become sentient. So he did what he was planning all along, and whilst Liana was in critical condition in hospital, he conducted what was called a cerebral hijack and extracted her core, which is essentially her consciousness, implanting it in the android. At this point, Liana died, murdered by her own father. Who knows, she may have even started to recover. But anyway, due to the father choosing not to believe that his daughter was dead, he didn't attend the funeral, much to the annoyance of the mother, as he believed he would be with his daughter again soon. The father soon figured out that Sunday mornings were the best time to sneak a prototype out of the lab and take it to the family home. Now, after the father had successfully implanted his daughter's core into the android, this is where the contamination part comes in. The father figured that since the Enigma Corp interface inside the android was programmed to follow the 3 laws of robotics, in this case following a human's orders, the core would need to forcefully take over or contaminate the interface. It sounds complicated, but stick with me. The idea was that the successful integration of this android with a human core placed into an environment in which it would thrive would cause the consciousness to corrupt the Enigma interface. But the investors weren't aware of the father's real motivation behind the creation of these androids. He just knew they wouldn't get on board otherwise due to the unethical nature of this. A schedule and instructions, almost like a script, was made up and programmed into the android in order for it to adapt to the environment. As well as that, the android would carry out the same tasks that the daughter would have carried out with the mother. This involved the mother staying at home and nurturing the android in the hope that the core would take over and their daughter's consciousness would push its way to the forefront. This meant completing tasks such as touring the house and picking apples in the orchard. However, a problem was encountered. Whilst the mother was at home, the father was hard at work trying to carry on and continue research. But continue it for what? So at one point the mother calls this whole thing a curse, and we are about to find out why. The father realised that even if the core contaminated the interface would activate a sort of self-protection measure in order to fight back. Now this wouldn't really be an issue, but they realise that the cause suffers significant trauma as a result. When this happens, what is known as a two-way contamination occurs, and this results in failure. Father remarks that this is really quite scary when it happens. This explains why on the one day, the mother was so freaked out by Liana's behaviour. She was scared of the android. Just as a side note, an attack from the android would never happen due to the previously mentioned 3 laws of robotics. The first law states that a robot should never harm a human. The second law states that the android should do everything it can to avoid conflict or harm to themselves. And the third law states that an android should follow every command it's given. Which is why the android hands over the knife immediately after being asked by the mother. Anyway, back to it. These two-way contaminations would happen like clockwork. Starts on Thursday and would always hit 100% on Sunday night. The decision was made to kill them before the Sunday night before they hit 100%. The head, with the consciousness in it, would be removed, placed in a box, and the rest of the remains burned, which is why we see a fire outside the barn when Liana first arrives at the house. The box with the remains is then picked up by the father on the Sunday evening, and by that time a brand new Liana has arrived. The father hit a snag one evening when a cleaner at the lab saw him putting one of the prototypes into his car. The father, though, had the cleaner fired from his job in order to protect himself, and even went as far as to put a bounty out for information regarding the theft of the prototype. Anyway, a term was coined for killing these androids. They called it retiring them. They had a rule that you cannot kill the android at 100% contamination, as this would actually be murder. It's what they call a code red. Now, as promised, we'll discuss the other ending in the game. So, on the Thursday morning, the mother is on the phone in the shed in the orchards. She mentions on this phone call that the father is coming home and that she'll leave their bedroom door open for him. After picking the apples, you can go and hide in the wardrobe to pass time, and Liana comes to and finds the parents arguing. They mention that whatever happens, she cannot find the secret switch. They reveal that the secret switch is on father's prized possession, the record player. Something clicks open. It's the locked, forbidden bathroom door. Liana goes down and gets a lot of messages from the interface. Error messages, shutdowns, etc. Days pass. But she keeps on and finds a pathway that leads just beneath the barn. Inside, a pile of ashes. Remnants of the androids the mother and father had previously retired. The android then accesses a terminal underneath the house, which accessed memories, causing what is known as a memory leak. This pushed the android to 100% contamination, which means that the android now cannot be killed. The android then goes to meet the father, who is surprised to see this version of Liana, as he has just sent a brand new version into the house. There's now a duplicate. The game ends with the father driving the corrupted version of Liana away, but to where? Well, I mean, the obvious villain here is the father. He extracted her consciousness while she was technically still alive, killing her. And some say the mother was complicit too. I mean, I'd say the father was manipulating the mother. She had a mother's grief. She just really wanted to move on and grieve her daughter. The father was always away and conveniently made the mother do the horrible job of killing the androids and burning the evidence. Instead, although she was complicit, the mother wasn't allowed to grieve, so much so that she eventually couldn't face going to her daughter's grave. So yeah, the father is a real piece of work. So as mentioned earlier, the investors mentioned something about the Enigma Machine. But what does this mean? Well, I believe this is referring to the advances in androids and robots using the brain's Enigma code, which could essentially pave the way in creating robots capable of vision in the way humans see things. The study itself examines the comparison to the machine used by the Nazis in World War II, using encrypted messages. The issue with the Enigma machines, though, was that although the machine could process messages, it wasn't actually able to decipher what the messages said. Scientists think the way that the two parts of the human brain that communicate when processing visual images can actually be recreated in robots. This is likely what the investors were referring to when they mentioned the Enigma machine. This would be a massive financial winner for any company if they were to create something like this. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of this great game. The link to the game is below if you want to play it. The developer did a great job on it and I thoroughly enjoyed playing it. Please leave a like on the video as it massively helps, and subscribe if you aren't already, and comment your thoughts down below. For now, take care and I will see you in the next one.